Well, you know, Tim, we're here in Arkansas and we're here visiting Bill Vaught, and who, in my opinion, was one of the top 10 warriors in our unit in Vietnam. And as we know, we're out here to try to get on record Bill's service and some about his life. And this is going to be for generations to come. You know, we know everything about Bill, but you know, as his grandchildren and great grandchildren and generations to come, and you know, Bill is going to have this as a permanent record in the National Archives. All this work is going to the National Archives, but even more importantly than that, it's going to be on the Wolfhound website, and we have made it so that this will be available 100 years from now. So I just think it's so important that the family and friends and fellow veterans can actually go and get, you know, what an opportunity to have a live interview. And so, Bill, I'm just going to start by asking you, what was your date of birth?
December 16th, 1949.
And what town were you born in?
I was born in Chicago, Illinois, the now extinct Chicago St. Joseph Hospital.
Mm-hmm. And were you raised in Chicago?
My dad was in the Marine Corps, so he was stationed at Great Lakes.
And I was just going to ask you to share with us a little bit about your folks.
Well, my dad was from Tennessee, volunteer. My mom was a Georgia Peach. My dad just passed away a couple of years ago, 94 years old. And he was a Marine for 16 years. He just stayed another 4. You know, he could have got 20 years in, but all his buddies were all out, and they were making $120 a week, and he was making $120 a month. So he decided to get out. You know.
Yeah. What was your childhood like growing up?
Oh, it's fantastic. I lived in a little town called Markham, Illinois, and the whole town was full of veterans. I mean, we had a hero living in every house, and they did so much for us kids. They built ball fields.
Oh, wow.
And it was great living there. You know, fantastic camaraderie with the kids and everything. Most of the guys I still talk to today. Played ball with them my whole life, and it was a great place to live.
Great. Now, were you drafted or did you join?
No, I joined. I got in trouble when I was in school.
How old were you at the time?
I was 17 when I quit school and I joined the Army. Actually, I got in trouble and I went to court, and they gave me the alternative, you know, clean up your act. So my dad was a Marine, so naturally I went in the Army.
Mm-hmm. You know. So did that satisfy the court?
Yes. Oh, yes.
so to speak.
It got me off the street.
Yep. And do you remember the date that you went into basic, or approximately?
January 2nd of 1969.
Okay. And where was that?
Fort Leonard Wood.
Okay. And how about AIT?
Port Pope.
Okay. And were you married or single at the time?
Single. I was single. I was going to get married, but it never happened.
Okay. And tell me what you remember most about basic and AIT. What, in your memory, what do you always stays with you?
Gosh, I remember. Wish I had to clean up my act on the outside, because when I got in there and they started screaming at me the first day and everything, I was like, you know, this ain't right. You know? And it was different because I was 17 and going to be 18.
Did you have to get signed in because you weren't 18?
No, I didn't. I don't remember. In fact, I might have even been 18.
Okay. Because I think 18, if you were 17, you had to have somebody...
I was 18, I think, because I went in right after my birthday.
Okay.
But there were so many guys older than me that had been drafted. And it was strange being in that environment with guys that were 9 years older than you. There were some guys who were 26 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to AIT and after basic, and that was kind of like, of course, it was infantry at Fort Polk, you know, more physical than anything and more routine, you know.
It brought some discipline in your life.
Oh yeah, quite a bit. I think the Army or any kind of military service is good for any kid nowadays. Our youngest son Jared went 8 years in the military and 2 tours in Iraq. He's a better man for it.
And you have to be proud of him.
Oh, I am. He did really well.
Now, do you remember when he was there? Did you guys send care packages and did you mail
all the time.
Right to him?
Right to him, and what really was nice was being able to talk to him on the phone, or on the computer, or text him and have him answer. When we were in Vietnam, if the only way you could talk to somebody was through Mars.
Did
radio.
you get your Mars call?
No, I never did. A Mars call.
I actually did.
I never did.
I stood in line for 4 hours.
And my good friend of mine who lived back in Markham was a ham radio operator, and we were trying to connect with him, but we never did make it. But being in a line unit, you never really had the chance.
Well, that's what I said. I got my one shot at it, and I took it. Like I say, I stood in that line for 4 hours, and I think it was for about 10 minutes. I think that was about the most time you got, but it was certainly worth it. That's for sure. So, talking about AIT, when you were in basic, you didn't know what you were going to be doing.
No, I had no idea.
What?
At the very end of basic, we were graduated, and they had us all standing out there in formation, and they were calling off. And every time they'd get to a guy that was going to the infantry, they'd yell out, "Infantry!"
And I'm assuming the majority of your unit went infantry, right?
Right, most of them did.
Yeah, that was the same with mine.
There was a few guys that had enlisted for 4 years or more. Of course, they got their choice,
They got a school or what. That's what they signed up for. What was your initial feeling? I know that you probably felt like most of us are going to infantry, but we always held out hope. There was always something within us that thought, well, maybe I'll get radio school or cook school or something. What was your feeling when you knew this was it? I'm going infantry, and I know what that means.
Yeah. My dad being a Marine, I know what they'd been through in World War II, and my dad was on Guadalcanal, and he had been shot twice, and I said, well, I'm going to be like my dad. That's all there is to it.
And what date did you get into Vietnam?
June 1st, 1969.
And do you remember, what was your impression when you got off the plane? Was it, where did you land? Benoit?
We landed at Benoit, yeah. And I remember it because we flew in at Flying Tiger Airlines. And, you could see the rivets on the wings spinning around. That's how rickety them things were, But we flew into Tonsanut, or Benoit, whatever it was. And I remember it was like a large tent city. And there were guys that were de-roasting out, and they were mean-looking guys. They were suntan and dirty uniforms, and they looked bad, And we come in, and we're just, we had the AIT and basic training tan, just from the neck up, and then our hands.
In your khaki uniform.
And our brand new khaki uniforms, brand new khaki boots, and it was funny because a lot of guys were getting off the plane and they're waiting to go, and they're greeting us and they're telling us good luck and keep your head down, and you'll be here sometime too, so you kind of wondered if you would.
Sure. So do you remember as I recall, we had to go check in. We had to kind of give our orders to somebody, right? And then what was?
We actually, it was at nighttime when we got in there, and by the time we got through checking out and everything, and we were off to Cu Chi, I think later on in the afternoon of that day or something, on a bus took us to, and it was scary then because there was only 2 guys on the bus with weapons.
That was my impression too. I thought, what in the world is
right
going to happen?
Yeah, and you're thinking to yourself, what if something happens? We have no way to defend ourselves, But we
And
made
by
it
the
through.
way, that truck went out in no man's land.
Yeah,
Do you
yeah.
remember that?
Yeah, what is that? Highway 1 or whatever it
Yes.
was runs right out of there.
Exactly.
And
And they were getting hit there all the time.
Yeah, and you'd see convoys along the way, and they were pretty well armed, and
Yep.
stuff. So it was kind of scary. I mean, I think we had a Jeep with a 50 cal in front of us, leading the way, and I think there was another truck behind us or something. But yeah, it was scary. It was really scary.
And then what was your impression when you went to Cu-Chi, when you got to the base and you went to the company area? Do you remember what happened?
Well, we didn't
then?
go to the company area right away. We went to that tropic lightning school. They
Oh,
call
yes, yes, jungle school.
Yeah, so you had about a week or 2 weeks of that stuff. And I still didn't know that I was going to be a wolfhound. And I found out later that one of the instructors there was a wolfhound. And but I didn't find out until the last day when they brought us our orders where we were going. And he actually brought the orders to me. He says, "You're going to my old unit, And,
Did he say, "I'm sorry that I had to hand you
no,
these orders"?
No, he didn't. He said, he wished me the best of luck, and that was about it.
Did you get any word about the Wolfhounds
Yeah,
and what kind of a unit they were and what we were put into most of the time?
When you're all together in them replacement barracks, the word gets out.
Yes.
and people talk, and they talk about the Wolfhounds and the Manchus, and and Wolfhounds though. That's who I heard the most about because they had just finished up the Diamonds and they were the premier outfit to be.
It really was, yeah. So when you got to the company area, when you finally knew where you were going and you got your orders, what do you remember about that?
I remember, gosh, I don't know. I remember checking in and putting my duffel bag on the bed and them hooches there. And then we had to go to supply, and that was, the guys, they were handing out our weapons and stuff and everything. They gave me an M16 right off the bat, which lasted until I got out to the unit, and then it was taken away from me, and they gave me a duper. And,
that's exactly, you're talking my tour right there. The same exact thing happened.
And it's funny too because you don't have any sidearm. I didn't have any sidearm. I just had the duper. And since I was the new guy in the platoon, I thought they always put you on LP on the ambushes because you're the new guy. You're going to stay up all night, And I get out there and I think to myself, I said, "What am I doing out here with this duper and an LP? If somebody does walk into the thing, I got to get one shot off."
Did you have a rucksack?
Yeah. I carried.
How many different rounds did they let you have?
Buckshot? I carried probably about 20 buckshot and about 60 HE rounds. And maybe more than that. I don't know. Plus my regular rucksack.
Parachute flares?
Which I had parachute flares in there. And I can't remember what else I carried, but I know it was a lot of weight. And then I ended up having to carry part of the load for the 60 gunner on top of everything. And
how much did you weigh when you went to Vietnam?
Weighed about 170 pounds.
So you were carrying 60 pounds.
Easily 60, 70, 80 pounds.
Yeah. And I remember those rucksacks, man. They just pulled on your...
And you never could get comfortable in them.
No.
And I don't care what you did. It was just... They were a nightmare.
Who do you remember in the platoon your first weeks or so when you got there?
John Fahey and Gordy Maga. Those were the two guys that...
And what positions did they have in the platoon?
Well, John was a Spec 4. He's a rifleman, and so was Gordy. Gordy was a Spec 4, but they were both soon-to-be sergeants. They were in their last... they were 9-10 months. I think Gordy was already up for sergeant. And I went out, the first place I went out to was a 50-day hard spot. And I just remember the rice being so high. And
do you remember the name of it?
So we called it the 50-day hard spot.
Oh, okay.
It was out right next to a cemetery. It was built right on the cemetery, because that was high ground.
Yeah.
And I was only there for about, well, it was a 50-day hard spot, but I think I was probably there for about 14 days. Maybe a little longer than that. I don't quite remember the thing. I know we left there and we went to another base camp out on the border. It was a mud hole. I don't remember the name of that one either.
Was it Harris?
No, it wasn't Harris. It was one of the bigger ones,
Jackson?
No, it was like Kotrick or.
Oh, Kotrick was out there. Yeah,
Kotrick wasn't built yet, but it was the one before Kotrick was out there. Yeah. I don't know if it was Ritkers or. I don't know, Ritkers might have been changed to Kotrick. I don't remember that either. But
do you remember who your lieutenant was?
No, I don't. I don't.
Platoon sergeant?
I don't even remember that. I know my lieutenant was my platoon lieutenant leader was Wasserman.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was Wasserman. He's a pretty good guy too, but he left. I'd only been in the country about a month and a half, and he went back to the rear.
Yeah, because they only were out there for 6 months.
Yeah, they weren't. I don't know how long he was out there because he was out there when I got out there. But he was a good guy.
Do you remember going to any of the bridges?
No.
Were you at Trang Bang?
No, we weren't at Trang Bang, but I think we were at Tay Din for a while, but that didn't last long. We went to a big base where they had them big guns at. I don't remember the name of that. After the first base camp I was stationed at, it was the first time I got wounded on an ambush patrol.
Tell us about that.
Well, it was August 5th, and we had just finished up the AP. It was daylight out. We rounded up all our gear, and I was point man, and I started walking back to we could visually see the patrol base because it was just flat rice paddies, and we were about maybe 2 clicks from it.
Mm-hmm.
And I started walking across the rice paddy because they told us to stay off the berms, because there were always booby traps.
Absolutely.
And I know I got about.
Were these wet rice paddies or dry?
They were wet.
Oh, okay.
They were wet, and I got
because you were when you got there, the monsoon was just about getting ready to start, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean it was. I'd never been in a rain like that before. But we're crossing the rice paddy, and I got about maybe 100 feet from the AP site. My Sergeant Kirby, my squad leader, was behind me, and somehow there was he detonated, or the radio operator detonated a 500-pound bomb that hadn't gone off from the Air Force.
Oh.
Luckily, we were spread out enough Kirby was killed instantly, and I was probably about 30 feet in front of him, and it blew me about maybe 75 to 100 feet.
Mm.
And I had a rucksack on, and of course I had my duper with me, and when they pulled me out of the thing, they said there was dirt coming down the sides of Ford trucks.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
And when they pulled me out of, Jim Bingham was the guy, pulled me out of the rice paddy. I almost drowned. I didn't have my rucksack on me. I didn't have my duper on me. It was just me. I had my bag of HE rounds that was around my neck, and that was it. I was pretty.
That was your bag of 16 or no? What did you have? HE rounds.
HE rounds, yeah. And that was still around my neck. And they got me out of there that morning. They back to Coochie. I didn't have any wounds on me at all. Just a concussion, and my arm, which they found out later, was broken. And that was it. They released me to go back out to the field the morning of August 12th, a week later. And that's when we hit the big firefight on the Oriental River there, where Kotrick was built at.
Now, was this your first contact?
That was my first. Well, I had been in an ambush that had made contact one time.
You guys popped on somebody?
We popped on a guy, and I was LP on that bush, and I called back to the guys, and I said, there's three enemy coming into the thing, but I don't think they are enemy. They look like they're One looked like a padre and two nuns, you know.
Oh, wow.
And I said, "You want me to stop them?" Because I didn't know, I was new in country. And
Yeah.
he said, "No, you just keep your head down. Don't let them see you. Don't say a word. Let them pass." So I did that, and they walked into the AP. Of course, the AP popped on them and, you know, killed them all.
What did they turn out to be?
And they had RPGs on them and all kind of booby traps they were out setting and everything. So, you know, this is stuff that you don't learn until you get there. You know.
Oh, yes.
You know, they don't.
Yeah, I never in training. I never even heard of things
No,
like that.
No, and it was scary. That was a wake up call for me.
So tell us about that first big contact, and it was by the Perfume River.
I was by the Oriental River.
Oriental River.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
And it was like a small canal. I think it was called the Oriental Vancom or something. I can't remember what it was. But
I know what it was. It was the Vamco River.
Yeah.
Because that's where we operated. The
Right.
Vamco, we were around there, and there was always a lot of NVA and stuff in there.
Yeah, Alpha Company had made big contact there. And we were going on stand down, and we were the only platoon left that hadn't been flown back to Kuchi. And they put us on, there was 21 of us, they put us on 7 helicopters, make us look like it was a big group coming in. You know, like 3 guys on a chopper.
Sure.
And we come in and started heading off, and that was the second time. I'd only been back out in the field for about 4 hours, you know, from the first time, and then I got shot. A bullet went through my duper, the barrel of my duper, to come up and caught me in the neck.
No. And your arm is broke.
Yeah.
You're out there with a broken arm.
Yeah. It was a duper, a damn bag of HE rounds.
And were you walking point at this time?
No, we had just jumped off the.
Okay, so you guys got busted.
We just got airlifted in there,
and you got busted.
Yeah, and they brought us in to support Alpha Company, and we were trying to flank the enemy, and we just ran right head on into it too. You know.
So just so I understand correctly, there was firefight going on.
Yeah, Alpha Company had been in it already.
Okay.
In fact, when we flew in, there was already a medevac that was down and it was burning, and there was another chopper that had been shot down there, and it was just smoke all over the place.
Do you remember, as the helicopter was coming down, what your feelings were?
God, I remember the chopper pilot wrote on the window, "It's a hot one."
Oh, wow.
And we I thought we were going to come in and land, and that wasn't the case. Guys were bailing off the chopper 8, 9, 10 feet in the air.
And they were probably telling you to get off.
And the door gunner was.
That's what I mean. The door gunner was saying get.
And he was laying some crap on the hedgerow, and there you could see Alpha Company off to the right, and they were laying stuff on it. And then there was all kind of airstrikes going on, and it was scary. You know, for my first contact, that was real scary.
I would imagine.
I remember being hit, and it was like I had been hit in the shoulder with a sledgehammer, and it just knocked me right back. And a guy named Bob Montgomery from Louisiana picked me up by the back of the collar and picked me up and said, "Keep them coming, you know. You keep them HE rounds going." And finally, we got we finally got closer to the to the hedgerow, and I was bleeding so bad that they finally took me back to one of the choppers that came in and took me back to rear. But that was my first contact. But the guy that shot me, I saw him shoot me.
You did?
I had just fired a round into the hedgerow in the bunker line where the enemy was, and he popped up out of a spider hole about 20 feet in front of me, and I couldn't do nothing. I was going to.
Well, you hadn't had a chance to reload yet.
No, I was going to throw my duper at him, you know, and he shot me, and then I remembered Fahey and Mag had just swarmed that spider hole, and Fahey threw a grenade in there, and put the guy away.
That was the end of that.
Yeah, but I got to see it because Montgomery picking me up. You know, it was like, "Get up, we ain't through yet," you know, and.
We're not.
And I was in so much shock that I didn't realize how bad I'd been hit.
Mm-hmm.
And
Was your duper wrecked because of the round going?
It had a nice hole in it, but
So it was done.
I just kept using it. I almost emptied my whole bag. I don't even know if the rounds were making it to the target. They were leaving my gun, and that's all I was worried about. And they weren't blowing up in my face or anything.
Sure.
And that's what you were taught to do.
Yep. And what? So then you went back to the fire or the field hospital.
Right.
That was in Cucci.
Right.
And then, so what do you remember about that?
I remember being in a tent, and they had me laying on a thing, and they had a towel over me, and they were working on my shoulder, and they kept checking me for any other wounds. And I told them, no, it's just the shoulder. And I remembered I had a towel over me, and they kept pulling the towel off me, and it was freezing in there.
Oh.
And, as a young kid, of course, I'm embarrassed. All these nurses and everybody running around, and give me that towel back. But they fixed me up, and they bandaged me up, and they cleaned out the wound, and had a small piece of shrapnel from the bullet was lodged in there, and it just missed my artery.
I was just going to say, man, that was close.
And they closed it up and bandaged me up and sent me back to the...
Did they discover the broken arm?
No, not... they didn't discover the broken arm until I was almost through with my tour.
Oh, my God. Did it, bother you?
It did, and I kept telling them it was swollen all the time, and I couldn't move my hand, so they took x-rays. And just before I went home, they put a cast on it. And when I got back to the States, I had to check in to the hospital in the States. I was stationed at Fort Riley, Kansas. And they didn't like the way it was healing, so they took the cast off and they reset it. And then we went to Reforger after that.
So so they patched you up, you probably had a couple of days in Cucci, and then they said you're going back out.
Right, I had about a week in Cucci.
Where was your platoon at that point?
Then they were of course, they were building Kotrick then, because they had defeated the enemy and they wanted to build, that's where the enemy was coming through. So, that's what the Wolfhounds did. You build
right in the middle of it.
Right in the middle of everything. And, I was at Kotrick for a while. After Kotrick, we went to the sugar mill.
So that means you were around the rubber plantation.
Yeah. And I remember, I think I remember most about the sugar mill is that a lot of our rifts in the area were done by chopper.
Well, and do you remember how highly vegetated it was over there?
Yes, it was.
I used to get scared. They made us walk in there, with just the platoon size.
Yeah.
And it was eerie.
Yeah,
and remember the bird sounds and it was just...
It was so thick, and it was ridiculous. And, same way with the Renegade Woods, not as bad as Hobo Woods, but Renegade Woods too. We were walked through there in platoon-size outfits, I mean, it's like we were just trying to pick a fight. And, the NVA had regiments stacked in there.
Absolutely.
And
they could have taken us out anytime they wanted, I think.
I think they could have, but I don't think they wanted to expose themselves. It wasn't
because then the artillery and the helicopters come in.
It wasn't worth it to take out 20 guys,
Now, did you always carry the M79? Or
no, after I got wounded, they gave me a 16. That was I guess that was my treat.
Okay.
And plus we had some new guys coming in too, so.
Yeah, and then you pawned that M79 off.
Yeah, so that was great. But I do know one fellow that came in the country that we gave him the M79 and he kept it for his entire tour.
Oh, wow.
Well, at least he still had it when I left. He was still there, but he loved it.
Yep. And I had a couple of guys that walked flank for me, and they had why we had the M79 guys out on flank I still can't remember, but they always were loaded with buckshot.
Yeah.
They had those buckshot rounds, and Dave Dunnick, he carried it the whole time. Yeah. He carried it the whole time.
Now, a lot of guys I talked to, the older guys, they were packing 45s along with the duper. I don't know.
That you were supposed to be issued one.
Yeah, but I never was.
Yep. And when I first got into the platoon, they took Joe Wascom, Big Joe,
Yeah.
he said, "Hey," he says, and he says, you don't want that.
Yeah.
You want to be carrying this duper." And he says, "Look at all the different rounds I'm going to give you."
Yeah.
And he says, "And you know what comes with it is this 45." And I thought, man, I'll have that 45 too. Well, you know what? That 45, when you held it and shook it, rattled. It was so loose and messed up. And when you'd shoot a round out of it, the round would leave the end of the barrel and go that way or up. And I remember telling Joe, I said, the only way this is going to be effective is if I can put it in his mouth and pull the trigger. Otherwise, there's no way I'm gonna hit this guy with it. So, but yeah, so then you were an M16 guy.
Right. About November something, we were on an ambush patrol out of Harris, and remember that little village out of Harris? We used to call it VC Village, but it was a big area where the NVA and the Viet Cong were going through there constantly, and we pulled an ambush out of Harris. This is when I left Bravo Company, and one of our guys stepped on a booby trap, setting up the AP, and so
I remember there was a lot of booby traps
Yeah.
out there.
It seemed like it was, and they had a cart path going right down out of the village, and this is where we were going to set up in the rice paddy off this cart path. And Rich Bird, one of the guys in the squad, stepped on this booby trap, and so we were going to medevac him out. So
Was it a Chi-Com grenade or worse?
I don't remember what it was, because after that, I went out on the ox cart out there on the trail to watch for anybody coming, and because we had two squads, we had one platoon out on the AP, and we had split up. One of us was going north of the village, and one of us was going to stay south of the village, and we were on the north side. And they were calling in the medevac, and I was out there on the trail, and I had one of the new guys with me, and we were laying there, and then here they come down the trail, and I told the new guy, I said, we got incoming, go tell the squad, and
So you didn't have a radio out there?
no, because they were calling in the medevac with the one. Well, finally they come on. It sounded like a herd of water buffalo coming at us, and I got up to run back to the squad. And as I stood up, the point man walked right into my M16.
No.
And I let him have it. And of course it was our own guys, and the point man was a Chu Hoi, a Kit Carson scout. So when I lit him up, right away I thought it was a whole group of Vietnamese.
Well, yeah, sure.
And I just kept shooting at the shadows, and went to reload. And as I reloaded, one of the guys from the platoon run up and tackled me. He said, "They're our own guys, But
So where were these guys coming from?
they were coming from the other AP site to hook up with us, because we had Bird had stepped on the booby trap.
Okay.
So
I mean, and you had no idea.
I had no idea
they were even out there.
No, I didn't, and nobody had told me, and I didn't have a radio, and I shot 12 guys, killed one, and shot 12 more. And when we got back into, they took my gun away from me that night. And when we got back in the next morning, the Captain Smith came up, the guy I really admired, a great guy. He said, "Bill, you're going to Alpha Company," and that was it. Bam, I was out of there. And that was my history with Bravo Company from June to November.
Mm-hmm.
Because they'd have probably killed him.
Well, it would have been a bad deal.
Yeah.
I mean, all the way around.
I think,
even though it was an accident,
right, but I think it was a good move on Captain Smith's part, although it made me look like the scapegoat, which I didn't appreciate.
Yeah.
The two new lieutenants that were out there had no experience. It was their first time out in the field. Neither one of them knew what doing. There was a lack of equipment,
And I can't believe that nobody knew that ambush patrol was out there. I mean,
I get there were guys in the squad that knew, but there was limited. There was only 3 or 4 of them because they were helping get Bird on the medevac,
Yeah.
and that's the only radio we had.
And by the way, I think I need to share this with you. There were 2 separate occasions that my platoon went out on ambush patrol that night, and we were about halfway to our ambush site, and we were ambushed by Delta Company.
And I believe it. It just
No, twice. Okay, the first time, and God, I don't know how a bunch of us didn't get killed, but we were going on the berms. We were going, and so they could see the silhouette, and so how we didn't get mowed down, I have no idea. And then we could tell it wasn't AKs.
Yeah.
It was M16s, and so we started yelling and screaming, and they stopped. So the next morning, you know what we found out? New lieutenant took them to the wrong place.
Yeah.
And so and there were so many new guys coming in at that time, and they should have been able to see just from the steel pots and the silhouettes of us. So that was one time. Another time, we were coming back, from an ambush patrol, and it wasn't quite daylight yet, and Delta Company, it was Delta Company again, opened up on us, and they were in the wrong spot, and that time we shot back. I mean, because
you didn't know,
and plus, we were just so spooked about our own guys, Delta Company like that. Well, so I know exactly, and they didn't know. They had no idea it was us. I mean, what was these new lieutenants that were coming in? I'm not even sure they knew how to read a map.
And we used to get a lot of shake and bakes coming in, sergeants.
Oh,
And we had some really good ones, but we had some ones that were real idiots that they were strictly by the book.
yeah. The smart ones were the ones that came up to us and said, "Would you show me the ropes until I don't want to get anybody hurt here."
Right.
Those were the smart ones.
Yeah.
The ones that came in and wanted to start telling you what to do right off the bat, those are the ones that we made sure were not getting anybody in trouble. We made sure of it. So.
Yeah, well, that was my tour with the Bravo Company. And I went to Alpha Company.
And tell us about that.
And good group of guys, Alpha Company. We had never had any big conflicts at Alpha Company. We did pop a lot of ambushes. We worked a lot out of Harris and Fuklou. And Fuklou was kind of scary because you had that fire base or that's a patrol base just south of Fuklou was getting hit all the time. No matter who was in there, they were always getting hit. And we'd be on AP, we'd get all the stragglers coming out of from the enemy because they were taking all kind of artillery hits, and half of them would coming through there. They were so goofy, from the artillery, we were just either picking them off or grabbing them and taking them back alive.
Yeah. But, did you have any experience with any ARVN compounds?
We did. We worked out of one star base near the border, and I don't remember the star base. It was a special forces camp, and there was a lot of ARVNs out of there. And I got in trouble there at that base because I woke up one night. I was on guard duty, and I looked around, and everybody was sleeping in the entire compound. I mean, it was ridiculous. It was. I threw a live grenade out in front of my position, to wake everybody up, and of course I got in trouble for it. Nothing serious. But my company commander was a guy I went to school with. He was 2 years ahead of me.
Really?
His sister was in my class, and
boy, it was a small world, wasn't it?
Yeah. When he got off the chopper, when he was that's when we were out at Kotrick. And he first come out to us. I seen him get off the chopper, and I started singing the Tinley Park High School fight song. So right away he knew it was me.
I'll be darned.
And he called me in his command bunker that day, and he said, "That ain't going to happen again." He says, "You don't know me, And that was it. We were on bad ground after that. In fact, I ended up getting kicked out of Alpha Company into the Charlie Company because of him. I had my patrol out on AP.
And this was somebody that you knew.
Yeah. But he was trying to make a name for himself. He was a new guy, and he took my patrol out on an AP one night, and he kept moving me. And this was at Jackson. And he kept moving me. He had moved me about 5 times already. And the 6th time he moved me, we moved, we got set up. He was trying to follow it. You know, Jackson had that big radar thing where they could detect the enemy and stuff.
Yes.
And he was trying to follow the movement he seen out there. So he would move us toward the movement all the time. And finally...
This is in the middle of the night?
Yeah.
And he's on the radio in Jackson telling you, oh, brother.
And then Dutch McAllister is back in the rear, and he's on the phone with him, and they're playing some kind of game at the expense of our patrol. Finally, he told us to move again, and I said some kind of derogatory things toward him, and I told him I wasn't moving, that we were staying right where we were at, and I got court-martialed for it. You know, I was up for E5. I'd been in country 7 months, and I was going to be a sergeant. I'd been a platoon leader for a month already.
Yeah.
And they court-martialed me, busted me down to private E2. And they busted me for failing to position the ambush site in the designated area or whatever it was like that.
Which time? That was that's the problem.
Well, they were going to get me for disobeying a direct order, too.
Bill, I got to tell you, I've never heard of that.
Yeah.
I mean, personally, I've never been out and had somebody in the rear tell us, okay, get up and move in the middle of the night. That could be like suicide.
Well, we got in trouble for it. And the next night we were supposed to go out again, and I hit all the guys in the bunker line in Jackson. And I said, we ain't going out. You know, it's bullshit because we've already been out like 3 nights in a row, and then after you pulled that shit last night, we ain't going out. You just call the sit reps from the bunker, and of course I got caught, you know, and that even made it worse. So right away, that's when I got sent to Charlie Company, and that was in the end of January or February when that happened.
So how did you make out with Charlie?
I love Charlie. It was a good bunch of. But the first night there, one of the platoons got mortared by our own guys. And I don't remember the base camp we were at, but I said, oh, gosh, not this again, you know. It was crazy, you know. But Charlie Company, I went on R&R, and I came back, and then they were tearing down Kotrick, which was kind of, you know, they'd been to Kotrick and built it, you know, and now I was there, Charlie Company tearing it down. So that was, you know, a thing. But,
were you still carrying an M16?
Still carrying an M16.
Okay.
And it was a good bunch of guys, a young squad. I was
and you're an E2 now?
I'm an E2.
What does a 7-month in-country E2 do?
Well, not much, you know. You just, you know, but I had a lot of respect. People knew where I came from. They
I was just going to say they were probably looking to you for leadership.
Yeah, and I've still taken out, you know, platoons.
That's what I'm saying.
I was an E2, but it didn't make any difference. You know, they didn't care. You know, they knew more than any of them. You know, by that time I had 8 months in country, and most of the guys were 2-3 months in country. They didn't care what my rank was.
No.
And a good bunch of guys. We never hit anything until April 2nd, you know, and that's when we got ambushed in Rankin Woods, you know, and they killed them Rangers, and we went in the next day. Company-size operation, you know.
I know they had Alpha in there. They had Charlie in there.
Alpha, well, Charlie was in there first. Alpha came in later, and Bravo Company came in finally at the end to help bail us out. But we took a beating. I don't remember how many guys got wounded. My lieutenant took half the platoon up on the right side where second platoon, I was in third platoon. Second platoon had lost their point man and a couple other guys there. And I took my platoon and went up the other side. And then I remember one of the guys in my squad being hit in the head, just peeled back the top of his head. And I couldn't get back to him. I was already up almost to their bunker line, pinned down. And then Severinos Rios, I think it was his name. I think he was in first platoon, come up flanking me with his machine gun. It was a 60, and they nailed him. And Gosh, I remember laying out there for almost 3 hours. I couldn't get back. Every time I'd move, they'd just.
Did you think this was it?
Oh yeah, and I had 9 months in country, or I had actually April 2nd. I had 10 months in country. I had May to go, and that was it. So 11 months in country, and I still was due my leave. I had taken my. Well, anyhow, I got out of that, and then company first sergeant put me on the chopper back to Kuchi, and I was going to take my leave, and then they canceled all our leave orders because they were going into Cambodia. So here I sat at Kuchi for about 3 weeks, and then I went out to Cambodia. I had 10 days left, and there was another guy with me that had 6 days left. He ended up being killed, and it was just. And finally, the chaplain grabbed me, and he told the company commander, "So I'm taking Vaught back to the rear with me." And I had 6 days to go, 6 days.
You didn't hardly have enough time to get processed out.
Yeah, no, that was it. But I went back to the rear, and I left that war behind me after that.
How did the Renegade Woods play out?
It was the first time that I was ever on the receiving end. We were always giving out. We were always the one taking it to them, and this time they took it to us. And to be caught in an L-shaped ambush was, oh, Jesus Christ! I didn't think we were going to get out. And the MKs are, they're a pretty bad weapon, but they sound pretty mean too. And when you got them AKs going off all around, you got them enemy machine guns going over you, and they're tossing grenades at you. And
did you get Cobra help? Or?
We got all kind of support. I laying where I was, I could see rounds coming in from our artillery. I mean, big rounds. They were big as logs coming in.
Those were 8-inch.
Yeah, and I could see them coming in right over the top of me. And then there were airstrikes right next to us. First company, after they had got initially ambushed, they dropped back and set up along a berm. And Bergman and his boys, what's his name, Sergeant Rock, and they were set up. They had a machine gun set up, and they were letting them have it. They were just they were going like crazy. I was on the other side, and we were just pinned down. We couldn't. It seemed like every time we shot, we'd get a hail of fire back on us, And I couldn't get this kid named Buechler was, he's the one that got shot in the head. I couldn't get to him, and the first sergeant and another guy were behind me, and of all people, the photojournalist was with him, and he's snapping pictures, and I'm like, Jesus Christ, help me get this guy out of here.
I hadn't heard that. I didn't know that you guys had a photo guy out there.
Yeah, he was one of our own. I can't even remember his name now, but
not Kierkegaard, was it?
No. He was a young kid. I don't think he made it back home. I
wonder if any of those photos got.
I looked for him online because I know that I know he was taking pictures, and me and Buechler were pinned down up there, and I could see him taking pictures like crazy, and I was waving for some support, and we weren't getting it.
Now, was he a journalist that carried a rifle?
He was one. No, he didn't carry no rifle.
So he wasn't going to be any good in a gunfight.
No, but it just irked me. It was one of them things that it wasn't right.
No, I hear you.
But that was his job, And when Rios got killed, I was behind a tree. I swear, might have been about 8 or 9 inches around. I swear, when that firefight was over, that tree was about 4 inches.
My my!
And I remember Bravo Company came in, and they just stormed over the top of us. And then there was also an armored unit that came in there. I think it was second 22nd came in behind them, but Bravo Company come in. But I think by that time we had depleted their force, and most of their force had ran. But we didn't know.
Those choppers had a way of,
and we didn't know that. We were still getting pot shots here and there, So we were, But Bravo Company and Kurzweil was the captain for Bravo Company. And I remember him racing right out in front of the guys, Bravo Company, and just racing right in there and just letting them have it, But yeah, it was a Bravo Company. I think Alpha Company finally showed up. Charlie Company, of course, Charlie Company battled. We battled them for 6 hours, I think. Charlie Company was a tough outfit.
Mm-hmm.
Very tough outfit.
So, right after Renegade, obviously you got out,
Right.
and they got you back to where?
And then we went back to Cambodia. Now I didn't. I was in Cambodia for only about 7 days, maybe.
And they were looking for caches and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And we had come in. I think guys had been in prior to us and swept the area or something, but we were still getting sporadic sniper fire. In fact, that's how some of the guys got killed. But God, I was just scared to death. I wanted to go home.
And that's where the chaplain ran into you?
Yeah. And he said, "What?" He said, "What are you doing out here?" Because I had another good friend that had served a lot of time, and after about 10 months, they sent him back to drive the chaplain's Jeep. After he had about 10 months in country. So whenever I did get a chance to go to the rear, I'd always look him up. Of course,
Yep.
and I met that's how I met the chaplain. And he said, "Bob, what are you doing out here?" And I said, "I don't know. I'm just walking on the sunny side of the AP because they had APCs out there. Second 22nd was. I said, I'm staying on the sunny side of the APC. I ain't getting in there to the jungle, and I'm just trying to stay clean. That's all."
Yeah.
And he said, "Well, I'm going back in. You're going with me." So that was that. And I think I got drunk for about 5 days and went home. And I remember my first day home at my parents' house, I took a bath and the dirt just came off me. It was unbelievable.
What awards did you get while you were in Vietnam?
I was awarded the Bronze Star for Valor twice and the Army Commendation for Valor once, and I was wounded twice. I also received the Vietnamese Cross of Gallantry or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm. You went home as an E2?
Went home as an E2.
They never got that straightened out.
I ended up getting out as an E4, which I was kind of proud of.
Well, okay.
But no, they never straightened it out. I didn't care.
It's funny, isn't it?
Yeah.
How we were.
Yeah.
I mean, do you remember how we used to say it don't mean nothing?
Right.
Do you remember that?
Yeah, and it didn't.
Where do you think that came from?
It didn't. And I had a lot of soldiers that were in my platoon that called me for years after they got back. And they said, "God, thanks for being there for us."
Yeah.
But thanks for spending the time, because of John Fahey and Gordy Maga, two old timers that took the time for me. When I got into country, everybody had a nickname. You didn't know who their names were. There was Mountain, and there was
Sure.
Bronx, and
Did you have a nickname?
no, they called me toward the end of my thing. They called me Sundance because that movie came out, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid.
Yeah.
And they all said I looked like the one guy. I don't know which one it was. Wasn't Newman? I know that was the other
Redford.
guy. Redford, yeah. So they used to all call me Sundance all the time.
So you get on the Freedom Bird,
Yeah.
and you're thinking, I know what's going to happen. This thing's going to take a mortar before it takes off.
No, not really. I flew out of Cameron Bay, or not Cameron Bay, but Benoit in a United Airline jet.
I did too.
And smooth takeoff. But you're right. In the back of your head, you're thinking, Jesus Christ, I hope this thing makes it home, But we got back to Oakland. I think that's where we were de-roasting out of Oakland.
Yep.
And me and about 3 other guys, 2 guys from our unit and 2 guys that I had met there, we stayed in Oakland. Actually, no, we went to San Francisco. We took a cab to San Francisco. We stayed in San Francisco that night. And we didn't even drink. We just sat around and bullshit, went swimming, and it was just nice to be home. And the next morning, I had a chance to fly out on a 747, a trial run from San Fran to Chicago. And I said, nope, I'm taking one of the old ones. I ain't getting on that thing. Yeah, so I waited a couple hours and took it.
Sure.
But I remember coming into Chicago and circling for the land at O'Hare Airport. It was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen.
Yep. So were you done, or did you still have to do 6 months at some base, or what?
I couldn't get out because of my broken arm. It was in a cast, and that's when I went to Fort Riley.
Oh, okay.
And then I
okay.
went to Reforger, and I was supposed to get out January 2nd of 71, but I couldn't get out because I had a broken arm and I wouldn't sign a release on it. And then when I finally did get out, they sent me to the VA in Chicago at Hayes Hospital, and they had to re-break my arm and reset it again. So, but I don't know. I always say, if I had to do it again, I'd do it, but I don't know if I would. I really don't. If it had to been for the camaraderie of the guys, that still exists today.
It must have meant something special to you, the first reunion.
It did. It was nice. Even though a lot of the guys had already been there before me, I knew what they had been through. They knew.
Oh yes.
That's when I met Joe Wascom, and he said he called me his replacement because I came in when he went home.
Exactly.
And even though I went to a different unit, he said, "Well, you're my replacement because you came in the day I left." So,
yeah.
It was nice.
And
it was,
Sergeant Rock and those boys, and to see them again.
Right. And that and Bergman, and that was really nice. And of course, I met a lot of people that I'm friends with today.
Oh yes.
To this day,
Well, you know what? We were brothers.
Yeah.
Forever. I mean, you know what? It didn't matter. Because you walked in the same footsteps I walked in. You went to the same exact places I went to. And so we'll have a camaraderie and a brotherhood that will last forever until the day we die.
I was just talking to online at Facebook with Bob Chichester, who was from my neighborhood when we were kids, and he got. Of course, I was with Alpha Company. I had about 6 months in country when he came in, and I looked him up because he was somebody from the old neighborhood I got to talk with, and it was nice.
Now, your two heroes, when you first went in, what did you say? One of them got killed before, or
no?
What, how about those two guys? What ended up
Gordy
with them?
Maga and John Fahey both made it home. John's a commercial fisherman down in Florida. Gordy's retired, living in Pennsylvania. He had some problems because on that August 12th conflict, he had got hit with an RPG. And
and those two guys are still
they're
alive?
still alive, still kicking.
So why aren't they coming to our next reunion?
I think it's because they're Bravo Company, and they just think that they,
Well, what are we going to do to get them out of that mindset?
Well, Fahey, he loves fishing. He doesn't come out. In fact, for a long time, Fahey didn't even like talking about the war.
Oh, yes.
I just happened to just recently get a hold of him online. And,
but you know how to get in touch with him.
Yeah, I got his phone number, him and Gordy both, I had a really good friend from Alpha Company who was hit by a drunk driver back in 97. Niles Delfasi, we were best friends. Yeah. I don't know. Being part of the Wolfhounds is something special. My dad, even being a Marine, realized, hey, he read up on the Wolfhounds. He said, yep. I'm proud of you,
I guess what I would ask is when you got home, what did you do? I mean, how did you go and get a job? And I want to know how you got married and that. Do you have kids?
I have 4 kids and one
I
adopted kid.
I want to know some of that.
Well, I didn't get married for a long time. I got home. I wasn't even old enough to drink when I got home. They used to sneak me in the bar, and and they'd give me drinks, But I didn't get married for a long time until I was about 29. Then I got married, and it didn't last long. I think it went sour after a few years, but I stayed married for like 12 years or something. And my son lives in Kentucky, doing real good. And
that was from the first marriage?
My first marriage, yeah.
And his name?
Jeremy. And my daughter's name is Brianne, Elizabeth Brianne. And like I say, she's a nurse. He's an engineer. I'm proud of them both. Man, they did really good, And I wasn't there for them when they were young because of the divorce, which really hurt. And then I met Monica, And she already had 2 kids, but they're my kids now.
Of course, yeah.
Carol is 42 or 43 now, and Jared is 31 or something, and they're both doing good. Carol's a legal aid, and Jared's working for a company. He's really happy with it, and making good money, and he's going into the electricians union. And God, you can't ask him. We had one son that we adopted, Joey. They kind of got lost, and he went to Afghanistan for a year. He lost his arm, and he went through a lot of problems. We tried to help him out for a long time. He was drinking, and we're trying to get back with him, because he's a good kid. He's married, and he's got a little kid now, and he's doing good. But, he don't talk to us, and that hurts,
Would any of those kids consider coming to Tulsa next time?
Well, the problem with it is our kids are all working now. That's the only problem,
Yeah.
If they could get the time off, they would love to.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, we'll keep that in mind and see if we can see if we can make that happen.
My daughter would love to be down there. I mean, she's even said that before. I know my son would love to come too. Jared has already been to one of the reunions.
Oh, cool.
In fact, they gave him a standing ovation. He was in his uniform.
Oh, yeah.
And God, he made a lot of friends with our guys.
Yes.
That reunion, that was the one in Branson.
Oh, of course, yeah.
And that was great. We sat at the table with Joe and his wife Pam.
Oh, yeah.
And Bruce and Darlene, and so Jared, and then of course with Joe being there, Jared got to meet a lot of people.
In kind of wrapping this up, I'd like to ask you, what does the American flag mean to you?
It means everything. It means everything, and I've instilled that in my kids too. I get so mad when I watch the news sometimes, some of the stuff that's going on. They don't really understand what it's all about. My dad being a Marine, growing up in a neighborhood where all the fathers that served in World War II and stuff in the Korean War, and how they used to parade that flag down the street on 4th of July and stuff. It hurts when I see it abused like it is nowadays. It really does. I mean, that flag, that's why people are able to do the things and say the things they do now against our country because of that flag.
Exactly.
And it just upsets you,
Bill, what is your definition of a hero?
My father. That was my hero. That's the epitome of a hero. And I'm sure there's a lot of guys that feel the same way about their fathers. But
Oh, yeah.
they were the greatest generation ever lived. They fought in World War II and against odds that were just unbelievable. And we didn't fight against the closest thing the enemy had for us as far as aircraft were the mosquitoes. That was their Air Force. But if you think about our fathers, they fight in the South Pacific and
Yes.
in Europe, and those are heroes.
Bill, if there's one thing that you would share with people that are going to watch this 100 years from now that you haven't shared with anybody, what would that be?
Being married for a second time around, I think family's the most important thing in the world. My wife means everything to me. I've been fighting cancer since 2005, and she's been there every step of the way. We've had some really rough times, and she's really stood up.
Well,
that's my hero. Her.
You know what? You probably feel like I do. When I married Laura, she saved me.
Yeah.
I mean, I was married twice before that, and I was convinced I would never, ever get involved with that again. And when I met her, she literally saved me.
Yeah, and that's great. Sometimes second time around is a charm. It was for me.
And third time was Bill ended up here. Tell these folks what last thoughts you have about the whole thing.
You know, there's always going to be wars. I don't care what you say, you know, what you do. There's going to be men. Sometimes it's our children. Sometimes it might be our grandchildren. But it's going to happen. And as long as we got young men that are going to stand up for our country, we're going to be America. We're going to survive.
Yep.
You know, this garbage that's going on nowadays, it ain't going to last long. There's too many patriots out there.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure our fathers went through some of the stuff when they were kids, and you know, they said, how could they act like that?
Yeah.
Or, you know, and look how far we've come. You know, it's with everything. I mean, we're the most tolerant nation in the world. We're the greatest nation in the world. That's all there is. That's just all you got to. That's all there is to it.
Yep. Well, Bill, I love you.
I love you too, John. Thanks for the interview.
And thank you for having us in your home. And I can't wait for us to be together again.
Yeah.
And we'll just keep this journey. We'll keep it going down the road. Okay.
You bet. And I'll be healthy enough to make the next reunion. That's for sure.
Yep. Well, if you're not, we'll have it here.
Oh, that'd be all right with me too. That'd be all right with me. But yeah, I missed the last reunion, and I was really sad about that. A lot of guys said it was really a great time, you know. And it's not far from here, you know.
Well, when we're together, it's a great time.
Oh yeah, it always is, and it's the reunion has evolved over the years, you know, with the stuff you've introduced into the thing, like with the helicopter thing at the last, not last one, but the reunion
The
before
Cobra pilots.
Yeah,
wasn't that something?
that was great, you know, and the venues have always been good. The last one I was able to go to was at Weston.
Yes.
Fantastic venue there, you know, it was great. Fantastic food, you know, fantastic camaraderie. You know.
You know, like I said, when the guys are together, hey, it's great.
Yeah.
So, well, buddy, I just can't thank you enough.
Well, I'm glad you guys could make it.